Hi there, and welcome to this video where we're going to look at how we can find selections using the Daily Digest top PR odds horses. So every day you'll get the Daily Digest, and in the top of that digest is the PR odds, which you can see here. And this shows you the top 4 horses for PR odds on the current day of racing. If you can't see them, then you just need to go to the settings and make sure that you have the checkbox for PR odds selected so that you actually get these horses coming out to you. Now you can see that today we've got 4 here, and they're done in order of time. And we've got Capla Spirit, Pachita, Split Down South, and Grace's Order. Now I'm just going to focus on the first one here, but you can do this for all the 4 PR odds horses, and this means that you've got 4 horses to investigate immediately every day using this approach. You won't necessarily be betting on every single one, but you know exactly the horses you're going to look at. You know they're going to be strong horses to start with, so all we're doing now is confirming whether they're horses that we may want to place a bet on. So I'm going to come over to the website here, and I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. Okay. So this is today's racing, and we had the first race was the 305 at Southwell, which is a standard race, novice over 4 furlongs, and there's 10 runners in this race, which is a class 5 race. So let me just open up that race here, and here it is. Now I've got the standard race card. I've got a sprint one that's showing up. Let me just change that over to the standard race card, which will be appearing for you. And there it is. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have a look at the PR odds order. So I sort in order of PR odds, and we can immediately see Capla Spirit is the top, as we would expect. However, we want to check how it's broken down, and this goes back to break points, and we've got a video on YouTube talking about break points and where they're at. So if you're not sure what I mean by break points, please go to our YouTube channel and check that out. But if I click on the PR odds and we get the breakdown of it, this is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the probabilities. So let's sort by probability. And we can see that our PR odds have found that Capla Spirit has roughly a 35% chance of winning. And then the next best horse is 16%. So there's a really big gap between Capla Spirit and what it's considering to be the next best horse. And then it gets closer to Mac and Rocket and Sweet Talk. And then it sort of gradually declines much more steadily. So this is what I wanted to check. I wanted to check that there was a big break point between Capla Spirit and the next best horse, which there is. So that is excellent. If I just sort by Betfair odds for the moment, we can see as well that the second favourite in Betfair has a 7.8% raw chance of winning based on the PR odds. So I'd just like to have a quick look at that when they're 2 horses very close to each other. But the main thing we want to check for is this giant break point here, which is there, and that is perfect. Okay, I'm going to close that down now. Next, I want to confirm a couple of very quick items. I want to confirm that this horse is in the top 4 for 5278, and it is. It's number 1 here. And I want to confirm that it's had a good race recently, and it has 15 days ago. If the horse hasn't had a good run, it's going to be blank like this. If it hasn't had a good run, I'm not going to be betting on it. Next, I'm going to take into consideration a little bit on the distance of the race, because if it's a sprint race, I want to have a look at the best ever speed. And this is a sprint race, it's only 4 furlongs. So I'm just going to sort by best ever speed. And you can see here that it comes in second under White Lion, 101, 125. So there is a bit of a gap here, but nothing hugely concerning. I'm going to come into this a little bit more in a moment. But the point is that Capla Spirit is in the top 3-4 for the best ever speed over this race type, and that's what I wanted to confirm. Finally, I want to confirm that the horse is kind of in the top 4 or so for PFP, which is a form-based rating, and again, sorting by PFP, I can see Capla Spirit here is the top of that by just a couple of points. There's not a huge difference, but it is in that top 4, and we can see, obviously this is a novice race, so there's not much experience going on, so the horses haven't change that much from their base score of 1500. PFP base score is 1500. So those are the very quick checks that I like to do there. I also quite like to have a look at the Reynolds ranking as well, again, just to make sure this horse is in the top three or four for the Reynolds rank. And again, it is. I'd expect to see that most of the time, but it's just another nice check to do. So everything's looking good. Now, there are two confirmations I like to do here. The first, I like to check the speed graphs to see how this horse is likely to perform over similar conditions. And I also like to run a Monte Carlo simulation. So I'm just going to start by running the Monte Carlo simulation. I'm not going to change any settings. I'm just going to do a base run, leaving everything exactly as it is. That's going to take a minute or so to run. So we'll just hold on while we watch this do the simulation. And we'll scroll down a bit and we can see what's going on here with the horses. We're expecting to see Capital Spirit again to be in the top 3 or 4. Again, it's just another confirmation. All of these ratings, factors, simulations, they analyse the race from a slightly different perspective. Of course, there is an overlap. There's always an overlap. But it's just a slightly different perspective. So what we're doing here is we are making sure that the horse looks strong from different angles. You know, it's sort of like we're looking at it from the front and then from behind and from the side, and we just want to make sure that it's looking strong from a lot of different angles. And we're not getting too worked up over it. We're not getting too stressed by it. We're just running a number of simulations, checking a number of factors, and just making sure that the horse is kind of in the top part of the field for all of them. So all round it looks like there's a strong horse. If there's a massive flag, if one of these is like, well, the horse is like 8th in the field or 6th in the field, or it's way behind the others, if there's one or two of those, then obviously that's a big flag, that's a big warning, because this approach is about finding very strong horses, and they're likely to be favourites. And we just want to make sure that we get that edge, that we win more than the 30% of the time that favourites will win by standard. So the simulation's finished. Let me just reopen it so we can sort the results. And we can see Capital Spirit here at the top with 11.73%, won 58.6% of its pairings, and it's kind of significantly better than the rest. So it's definitely in the top. So that's great. So we've done those 4 checks. We have checked here the PR odds. We've checked the break point in the PR odds just here. We've checked this break point. It is significant. We've checked the horse in the top 4 for the 5-2-7-8. We've checked that it's had a good race recently. It's a sprint race, and we've checked that it's in the top 3-4 for best ever sprint over this race type. And we checked the same for the PFP as well. And then we've done the Monte Carlo simulation. All of this has just taken a few minutes, nice and quick. Now I want to confirm how the horse is likely to compare under similar conditions. So this is an all-weather race, class 5 over 4 furlongs. And I'm just going to open the speed graphs. Now the speed graph for this race is showing that it's a comparatively low competition, and we can see the speed ratings for every horse in this race in each of their past races. Now, I'm going to start with a dynamic filter because I'm actually only interested in all weather. I'm going to apply that filter, and that reduces it significantly. We can also zoom in on these graphs, so that's what these sliders are for. We can zoom in here if we just want to see 2020 racing. We can zoom in here if we're just looking for the speed figures within this section. So we can use this to zoom in should we need to. But at the moment we don't need to. The first thing we note here is that recently White Lion, who has previously performed well back 2019, 18, 17, has not performed well in 2020, and there was kind of a year's break here in its performance. We'll also notice that Capital Spirit up here is way higher than the others on all weather and seems to be improving in speed. So that is a very strong point. You can see here the distance is, if I hover over there, you can see that the distance of this race was 1,094 yards. So that's a couple of 100 yards longer than today's race. And the distance here was 1,336 yards. So that's going to be around 6 furlongs or so. It came second there. And in this race came second as well. But this is great. This horse is improving. All the other horses are declining. or significantly lower. Whistling Sands being the next closest, but still being significantly lower. We could then narrow this down, but I'm not sure there's actually enough racing here to make it worth narrowing it down further. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reset that filter so we can see everything. But I'm going to ignore all these old years of racing. So I'm just going to zoom in here. I'm only interested in kind of the last year or so. There we go. And that's kind of the last year or so. And I'm interested in that because I can immediately see any horses that look like they might be competitive. Again, this is White Lion. This is a big concern. This horse might jump up. If I expand this a bit, we can see a similar pattern here. Decline, decline, decline. Poor race, and then started to improve, and then a gap, and declined again. So potentially White Lion could come back here with a good performance, having been on a decline. Something to be aware of. However, I would like to see evidence of that personally before placing my money on it. We can see here the Macam Rocket has been pretty strong, but over National Hunt Flat. If we look at its best races, the ground was soft. That was a hurdle, and here the ground was soft. If we drop down to some of its worst races, that's all weather, and then this was a soft race where we got a slight improvement. So the track type, the ground possibly isn't going to suit this horse. None of the others are really coming anywhere near. Whistling Sands isn't too far off, so there's potential there. And come back down to here, Intrepid Italian again, but that was a flat turf race, so not an all-weather race. Otherwise, Kepler Spirit looks to be a strong horse, as we can see here. Next to each of these horses' names, there is also a figure, and if I change this back to all-weather, so we've got a little bit of a match for the race conditions here. We can see Kepler Spirit has a score of 94.88. So this speed figure, this is a dynamic speed figure based on your settings in the filter. So for all weather races, Kepler Spirit has averaged a speed rating of 94.88, which is by far the best from the other runners. So this makes Kepler Spirit a strong selection. For me, this would be a horse I would then go on to place a bet on. If the race is a sprint race, you may also want to take a quick look at the pace. We can see here predicted pace is true. Leaders or early pressers are most often going to win these races, and a good early presser is more likely to win it than a leader. We can see that actually in this race, Kepler Spirit's running style is a mid-pack. However, we're interested in total pace scores, and we can see based on this that actually there's not a huge amount of difference between the pace scores of these horses. So Kepler Spirit is likely to be in the front, particularly knowing that it is the fastest horses by far in this race. So with that information combined, we can use that. But you don't need to use the pace. That's just an added piece of information if it's a sprint race that you can add in there. So our main factors that we are looking to check here is we are looking to check that there is a good break point on the PR odds. Here, that it's clear and the biggest. We are looking to check the horse in the top 4 with a 5278 CFR rating. We're looking to check that the horse has had a good race recently, and has actually had a good race, so that if this is blank, it would not be a horse I'd be interested in. We want to check if the horse is kind of in the top 3 or 4 for the PFP rating. When I say top 3 or 4, this depends a little bit on the field size. If it's a really small field, you may want to go for the top 3. If it's a bigger field, you may want to go for the top 4. And if it's a huge field, you may even want to go for the top 5. So you just want to make sure that the horse is amongst the strongest runners in this race for each of these pieces of information. Then we ran the Monte Carlo simulator. And again, same principle. We're just looking at this horse from as many different angles as possible, as quickly as possible, to make sure that it looks to be one of the strongest horses from lots of different angles. Nice and simple. And again, from the Monte Carlo simulation, that looked to be the case. Having qualified under all of those conditions, we then opened the speed graph and we looked using the dynamic filter. We filtered by race type and saw how many races there were. If the horses still had a huge amount of races here, we could possibly add in class, ground condition and or distance, but just add one in at a time. So the next thing I would add in would be the ground condition, and if there were still lots of races, I'd add in distance. If there were still lots of races, I'd add in class. But we didn't have many, so we just looked at flat all weather. Kepler Spirit was clearly the best. There was a bit of concern White Lion, but there's been a huge decrease in performance. We then clear this filter to see what the horse's past history on all race looks like, and we noted that White Lion has a habit of dropping down and coming back, dropping down and coming back. So White Lion could be a threat today, a serious threat, could come back. We are aware of that possibility. However, outside of that, we saw by zooming in a bit closer that there are no other horses here really that are likely to be as strong. And if we put the dynamic filter on again for the race type, we could see that under this race type, Kepler Spirit had an average speed rating of 94.88, which is significantly stronger than any other horse in the race. All of this points towards this horse being one of the, if not the strongest runner in this race, and likely a good bet. So we would then look at placing our bet on Kepler Spirit, and the odds would determine which way we're going to go. At odds of 2.53, that would either be a back bet or an 80-20 bet, depending on your risk level. An 80-20 bet in this situation, if you are lower risk, may be preferable because we know that White Lion, there is a possibility for this horse to come back. However, if we check the Betfair odds for White Lion, we can see the odds are 160. So taking the odds into account here, it's very unlikely that this horse is going to come back. So Kepler Spirit, then that may influence your decision there to place the back bet on Kepler Spirit as opposed to the 80-20, but that is dependent on your risk levels and how well you cope with losing sequences, because you will obviously get longer losing sequences with back bets than you will with 80-20 bets. That's the end of this strategy. This is how we use it. If you've got any questions, please start a thread in the forum. Let me know. Give me some examples of you analysing these races. I can work through them with you. We can work together to adapt this strategy to suit you particularly or personally. And as you can see, it's pretty fast, it's rapid, it's based on the theory that we are taking horses that we know to be strong from our odds line anyway, and we're using that information, we're confirming it by looking at this horse from a multiple of different angles very quickly using different factors, and then we're doing a double confirmation using speed graphs. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch. If you would like me to check your analysis on some of these races, then please post them in the forum. I will read through them and get back to you. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Bye for now.